welcome back to Reality with Reality Hub. And we have a special friend and guest in the virtual studio today who's coming to us live from his own private lockdown in a quarantine facility hotel in New Zealand. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Hey, Rich.
Thank you very much,
welcome.
Stephen. Thanks, Rob. Good to see you guys virtually. I can't reach out and touch you, but I feel like I can.
It's taken this long for us to join and get together virtually.
Well, yeah. Well, we were separated by the planet Earth, and now we're separated by the walls of this luxury hotel that I'm currently in. On the taxpayer, but that's another story.
And it really is wonderful to have our only fan actually on the show. So thank you for both listening and now contributing.
It's an honor.
If you actually ever listen to us from the beginning, we'd occasionally go, and shout out to our friend Richard in
London.
I
did. I fast forwarded to the part where you said that and then just kept rewinding it.
So, I mean, you've been away from the shores of our country, your home, for like 2.5 years, and you've just come back. But coming back at this time and under these circumstances, how weird is that, eh?
It's really weird, man. It was so hard getting back as well. Like, I flew with Emirates via Dubai. Anyone transiting through Dubai or stopping in Dubai for any reason has to have a COVID swab test, a clear COVID swab test from what was originally a clinic that Emirates had mandated you had to go to one of their clinics, but because those clinics were getting flooded with people, they let you go to any private clinic, but it couldn't be an NHS clinic because it had to be signed by a doctor. So you had to get the test, and if you're flying, 96 hours before you fly. But if you're flying on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, they don't test in a lot of cases, especially in London, on a Saturday or a Sunday. And if they do test on a Sunday or a Monday, even they won't process that test till 6 p.m. on a Monday night. It's a 48-hour wait to get your results back. If there's a backlog, it can be 52 hours. So it's pretty stressful just trying to get that test to even fly. And then you've got the flights being cancelled all the time and changed around. And there's a few Kiwis who I spoke to who are flying around this time who some didn't even know about the COVID test because, you wouldn't know, because before August the 1st, you didn't need to get one if you were leaving the UK. Coming back to New Zealand, but then after August the 1st, you have to get that 96-hour COVID test. So
how easy was it?
That's just to fly. That's just to get on the plane, So
how easy was it to get all that information? Was that just something you had to learn by taking the steps, or was that coming from the travel agency, from the airline? Or, I mean, it must have been a difficult situation to kind of navigate.
Emirates are pretty good in their passing on of the information. They email you and they text you as well, which they didn't have to do. I thought it was quite good.
They are very good.
And they did text at 11:30 at night, and I ignored it for about 2 days because I thought it was just a text confirming my flight, but I didn't realize it was to enlighten me and let me know that I had to have this test done. So they were pretty good. They were pretty good. Emirates are pretty good. But you only need the test if you're traveling through Dubai. So But
hey, let's back up a bit, because you had a life going on overseas. So one of the reasons we thought would be cool to have you on the show is because we've had a few COVID-related sort of discussions with our friend Janine and her own lockdown in Melbourne, right? So there's a regional lockdown going on over there. You're flying in from a country that also had its own regional lockdown, and you've left there to come here, which it's now also in its own regional lockdown. And I remember you telling me some really interesting things as you came through the airport going, this is a joke. And that's some stuff I want to get to. But before we get to that, your life, you would have happily stayed there, right, for a period longer. This wasn't when you were going to come back. Am I right?
No, well, I probably should be coming back for personal reasons, but I didn't particularly think that I had anything, family reasons to come back, which is, a big reason. But financially and work-wise, I did have a life over there. I had a car had a good job, worked with a really good bunch of people. I had a job that allowed me to pursue art whenever I wanted to at the drop of a hat, because obviously if you're acting in England, auditions come with 24 hours notice sometimes if you're lucky. So you have to have an extremely flexible job. You have to have a really flexible job here for sure, but probably more flexible in England. So
because we might get 48 hours notice.
Well, that would be a luxury. You never got that over there. Right. And you couldn't really, you can try and change the time, but it was really, really difficult, and they didn't like it very much. So you quickly realized that it wasn't the done thing. You just made yourself available, how much do you want it kind of thing. So I had a job that allowed me some time off to do that, which was brilliant. So I had a really good life. I did really, I had a pretty good life over there, apart from the fact of COVID, of course. But yeah.
And you're a car enthusiast, and you found one of the great models over there, right?
Oh gosh, no! Can we not talk? No, let's not talk about that.
But it's interesting. The first thing you say when you say I had a good life over there includes, and I had a car.
Well, yeah.
I had. They don't count that. You had your dream car.
Well, I had. Well, yeah, but it's the breaking up of the relationship car, the midlife crisis car. There's a lot of other things you could call it other than dream car. But I did, it is. But that was probably a folly that I shouldn't have done in hindsight. We wouldn't do it again. But that was just, I was in a financial position at a certain time where I could do that. So England was good to me, man. Some people say, oh, it's real tough and blah, blah, blah. And I found that maybe the first time around when I lived there 15, 16 years ago. But this time around, I don't know. I just, I kind of slipped into society more easily, and I had a really good acting agent. I got, maybe not so much work this year because of, for obvious reasons, but last year I did okay. Yeah, no, it was, I had a really good life, and coming back was a necessity for personal reasons, see my mum and things like that. But I don't know. I don't think I would have come back at this particular time had it not been for COVID, which is, been terrible in England for a certain period of time, but we are coming out of it over there now. I don't live there anymore, but we're coming out of it now in England. We were coming out of it when I left, and we're at a completely different point in the way we thought about it to where we are now in New Zealand, which is eye-opening, which is really, really not what I expected. And maybe I wasn't paying enough attention to the news, wasn't talking to enough people back home, I don't know. But, yeah.
I noticed you said a couple of things about how behind we are in New Zealand about our approach to it. And to any listeners who enjoy Rob and I talking conspiratorially about the reality of whether it is all it's cracked up to be or not, you're no conspiracy theorist, Richard, or certainly not these days. And but you still had some interesting points that you raised about how it was being treated, and it didn't make sense.
I think that there's all these phases that you go through with something like this, right? Maybe it's the first is you can't believe it's happening, then you're freaking out and you're absolutely petrified of it, and then you realize that it's not something you can eradicate, it's not something you can beat. And what we heard a lot in England from New Zealand was, we've beaten the virus is beaten, we're beating this, beating. And in England, we did that at the very start as well. And then we realized that this is probably just the way it's going to be now. You're not going to beat it. You can't close the borders. They're trying different ways of stopping people traveling in England now, which is really interesting. It's another story. But, they tried to stop people from traveling, and they will for a certain period of time. But eventually, humans need to live. They need to be free. They need to have freedom of movement. They need to congregate. They need to feel part of a community. And the toll that wasn't the health toll, that the stuff that you can't quantify, mental health, relationships, jobs, that became more of a focus in England, and people started to realize that was just as important. You could say more so, maybe. But so we're in a completely different phase over there now. Well, I keep saying we, but it's in a completely different phase over there now. It's not a containment phase as you might think. It's more of a acknowledging that this is something that's happening, and it may be happening for quite a long time, and who knows how long. People say a year, people say 6 months, no one knows.
Do you think in light of the destruction to economies and the destruction to health of individuals, many thousands of people who can't get cancer treatments or any other normal things that they need, let alone, shoulder surgery.
Yeah.
Do you think that, and I say that because Richard had surgery.
Yeah, and that was unique as well, because to have surgery on my shoulder, it was classed as urgent during the peak of lockdown in England.
Mm-hmm.
Being in a hospital with a surgeon who had only been able to do my surgery because 2 weeks earlier he'd recovered from COVID, as had his assistant surgeon who was also in the room. Right.
Wow.
So it's not like yeah, he had it. That's why he couldn't do my surgery on the 26th of March when he was supposed to do it, right? Because he had COVID. So
that's how he managed to get it over the line as a practitioner, as a surgeon, and he managed to get you classified as urgent case,
well, it was
so that you
kind
could
of
slot into
well.
the requirement. Okay, because no disrespect to how bad that would have been, but there are people who aren't qualifying as urgent and they're really suffering. And do you think that with the way that this pandemic is affecting the lives of people who can't, I'm told, get access to regular cancer treatments as they might, or other things, or maybe mental health that might go undervalued as to just how important the risk of people are for suicide and so forth, that we need to come to a point where we live with this pandemic much like we do a cold or a flu?
Well,
or is that pushing too hard?
I don't know. There's sort of, in England, when I was, they just sort of got to a point where they tried to lock down again for a second time. Not a full lockdown like it was the first time, but mind you, this is kind of lockdown light this time, right? If you just see the streets, there are people out and about. Not like what I was told the first time was pretty hardcore lockdown, right? I wasn't here, but people were telling me it was like that, and it was certainly like that in England for a while. And then they tried to do it second time, lockdown 2.0, and people just said, we can't live like this. We can't do this. So there is a toll far greater than, you can't say far greater, because people have died, and that's another thing, like COVID is real. I'm not saying it's not real. Where I worked in Kingston upon Thames, the local bar manager died. He was only in his early 40s, very, very highly regarded and well-loved guy. And it rocked that part of the community, and especially people who went to the Oak. It was a really nice pub, and he was a nice bloke. I was an estate agent, and we had a few people who knew people who had died, and had family members who had died, and houses came off the market because of family bereavements due to COVID. It was real. It was real. My friend James had it. His whole family had it. His mother-in-law, his 4 kids, he had it. 6 hours. He just passed out and woke up 6 hours later one day. He was in agony. He recovered. So it was, it was all around us. I lived in a shared house, and guy that I lived with had it, and I was leaning over. That's another story, but I was leaning over him, saying,
I was going to ask you about this.
Do you need anything, Simon? Do you need anything? Yeah, glass of water, mate. Yeah, really. Could do with a glass of water, And so I'd hand him a glass of water, and he'd cough and splutter, and he had COVID. He had coronavirus. He was at the peak of coronavirus. I didn't.
And you
know
were
that.
right there in his own home.
I wasn't
in your home with him, and you didn't get it.
Leaning over him for days on end, asking him if he was okay. And I didn't get it. And I had a negative antibody test, and obviously a negative swab test as well. So
when you went for that test, did you tell them that you were exposed to someone who had it? That's why you were there?
Yeah.
No, but did you tell the testers that? Or did you just go as though it were a random test?
Oh, no, I told them that I've definitely been exposed to it, yeah. Right. But we were hearing that, through work. I'm meeting dozens of people a day, literally dozens of people a day, and there were stories like that all the time. Oh, my wife had it. My wife had it. Oh, I didn't get it. My wife had it. Or, oh, my brother had it. Yeah, my brother had it. And I didn't get it. Neither did his wife. So it's such a random thing. So just trying to trace that and eradicate that. I don't know, man. It's just.
Did you ever meet that guy at the pub who died, the owner?
Only in passing.
What sort of health was he in?
He was in good health. He was fine. Yeah, I don't think he had any underlying health issues. No.
He wasn't overweight?
No, I don't think so. No, just a regular, pub landlord with a wife and kids. It was, tragic. But so it's a sorry, Rob.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there seems to be a huge discrepancy on the numbers and just how people are dying. Like, are people dying just of this COVID-19, or are there all these underlying factors involved? Because, our Director General actually said, and I'll just use this as a reference, that he was quoting on one of his daily, talks. I don't even tune into these.
At the podium.
Yeah. Updating the information of the state of it for New Zealand. And he was saying that it was a 70-year-old person that was died at a rest home that had a negative a COVID test. Okay, so he didn't have COVID, but they're counting it as a COVID death. And this is him saying that. So he died of something else. And I just thought, that is just mind-blowing. It's like saying, hey, you died of cancer, but you never really had cancer. Or you died of liver disease, but you had a gunshot wound. So I hear that more and more, but when you get that spoken from the Director General, the guy who's leading the charge and informing the nation, then I'm just going, what's going on, I mean, if you said to me, yes, he died completely of COVID, and that's it, then I would believe that. But the thing is, that wasn't the case. So I struggle with that, and I've struggled from the very beginning to believe that it was that devastating and that dangerous. And maybe it's because in New Zealand we've been sheltered from it. I know no one who's had it. I know no one who's died from it. So that's just my sort of perspective on it. And all the figures.
And it's worsened. It's worsened by the stories you hear of the kinds of examples you were giving, where someone dies of something else, but they're allowed to put it down as a COVID death.
Yeah.
Well, I did an audition like a couple of days before I left, but 3 days before I left, and the casting director just casually said, "Oh, well, I had coronavirus last week, so I'm glad we're filming this week."
Oh my God.
She recovered from coronavirus the week before, and she was telling me, all the symptoms, and one of them that's ongoing for her is she felt like she had sunburn on the top of her head, right? And I thought it was interesting because we had a lady whose house we were selling, we sold it, and she had coronavirus as well, and she had felt like sunburn and itchy rash on the side of her face. So I knew so many people, or came into contact with so many people who had coronavirus. I started to notice the same symptoms or after effects. So, I mean, I couldn't write down how many people I met who'd had coronavirus. I mean, so dozens and dozens and dozens of people. And then my mate would say, "Oh, my uncle's got it, my dad's got it." So not even counting people like that, right? So it's way, way more in your face over there than it is here, because I have spoken to quite a few of my friends in New Zealand, like yourself, and the fact that have you either of you met anyone who's had coronavirus?
Negative.
No, see that?
Not even by 2 degrees of separation or 7 degrees.
To me, that's astounding. It's astounding because. And
I don't know if we're fortunate, if it's luck, but
it's probably population size, but it does. But it just shows you how many people have had it in England, and if they're saying
it's normalized.
It's not completely normalized to a point now where they say that 40% of people who've had it haven't had any symptoms whatsoever. 40%.
Yeah,
right.
That's a huge number.
If you think about how many people have had it in England, and the numbers are huge now, huge, right? Double that. It's insane. But so I think in New Zealand, it's really, you guys have a completely different, or me now, we have a completely different perspective on it, because you just don't know people who have had it,
of course, and it's good talking to you.
People are off. Yeah, people are off work with coronavirus. But in terms of its how deadly it is, I don't know, because there's still conjecture in England about the numbers and whether people who have died from underlying health issues should be counted as COVID deaths. They're still trying to define what it is, what it is and how dangerous it is. And
that's where a lot of confusion comes in, because you don't know exactly what it is, and you don't know. Everyone's got a different response, and people are saying that it's 0.2% of the population will die, which is so it's a fraction compared to heart disease or diabetes or stroke or all dozens of other diseases. So it just how does that factor in the level of how dangerous it is? But then you look at the response of the world, and particularly every country, you just go, well, was it just an overreaction? Can't people see this? Is it not obvious?
Well, this is a huge reaction in New Zealand to lockdown.
Yeah, I mean,
you guys in New Zealand did so well. I mean, people in England would come out to me all the time saying, "I bet you want to go home. God, if I were in your shoes, I'd be gone." And that, like, seriously, all the time, every single day. And New Zealand had done so well and continues to do really, really well. But I mean, you can't keep the borders closed forever. And the English were saying that to me all the time. How long is she going to keep those borders closed? Like seriously, they dreamed of holidays to New Zealand. Are they now being told that they can never, ever come to New Zealand? Or is it for the next year or 2 years? And when they do decide to open up, are you just going to get COVID like we've had it in England? That's the...
Yeah. Well, like I've often said, I've often said this on other podcasts, but I feel that we are being used as a country to say to other countries, look, didn't we do well? In terms of our response, it left us completely free for 100+ days. It would have been more if it wasn't for that damn Americold facility.
Well, doesn't the World Health Organization consider that a pandemic has been beaten when a country's been completely free of it for 36 months straight? I believe, I could be wrong.
Okay,
correct me, but I think that's the case. So the fact that, and everyone knew in England, people I spoke to always, people I worked with, they said, well, you've beaten it pretty quick then. And they were all, they knew it was going to come back. Yeah. It's just like Melbourne, look what happened in Melbourne. Yeah. And so it's not something, it looks like right now, it's not something you can beat. It's something you have to live with, deal with, learn to live with.
What gets me is if the overall death rates in a country aren't actually increasing year on year, even with this new pandemic, then it tells you that it's so out of proportion with the effect that it really has. Because you could say this number of people have died of COVID, and yet the same number of people would have died anyway because they were just at a point where they were waiting for something to kill them. No offense to anyone who that is completely incorrect for. I don't want to offend anyone. Maybe that young pub owner with his young family, really would not have been taken out by a regular flu. But if you look at the elderly and the numbers that they're dying, my mother, who passed away last year, was elderly, and essentially what took her out, because it was August last year, was catching a flu that led to a lung infection, which is the sort of thing that you and I would, cough up a bit of sputum and maybe go on some antibiotics, maybe not. You'd be a week or two feeling a bit shit, but you'd be fine. But that can take an old person out. So when you see all these young people that you referred to, that you knew, who were coping and got by on it, that says that they would also survive things like the flu, that would also take them out for a couple of weeks. I mean, how can you have someone at a casting go, "Oh, I had COVID last week, but, life carries on."
Well, she was so really normal. Annoyed. She was really annoyed at this feeling of having sunburn on the back of her head, and I just remember that in particular because that was exactly the same sort of symptom that another lady had that I knew. And
funny, corona means sun.
It does,
or is associated with
does it?
In terms of like corona spots, coronal flare.
Yeah, right.
sun.
Okay. Yeah. Beyond my knowledge. But yeah, so it was so, it was everywhere in England, and everyone knew someone who had it. I mean, Simon had it. I lived with Simon and his family, so he didn't even know he had it. It was at the start, and everyone, I think it's pretty much accepted now that it started a lot earlier than
we thought.
So maybe October last year, November last year. So anyone who was sick in England, like really sick with a really bad flu that they couldn't explain, and lethargy is obviously a huge symptom of it, and loss of taste and smell. We thought it was coughing. That was the major thing. Everyone's, he's got a cough, he's got a dry cough. And so if you didn't have a dry cough, you couldn't have corona, right? That's what we thought up until about the middle of April. So there were lots of people who may have had it, probably did have it, from November through to April, who didn't have the cough. And then when we found out that the stronger symptoms are loss of smell and taste and lethargy, then they went, oh, right, I felt like that in November. I felt like that in December. I remember at Christmas, So there were so many people that probably had it. I mean, people I worked with, people I came into contact with all the time were just casually saying, I had it.
I mean, yeah. I was sick at around the time that Corona was coming out.
You should have an antibody test.
But I knew I didn't have coronavirus. I knew I just had that year's man flu, and it felt no different to me. And I think a lot of people would have had that and called it something it wasn't.
Yeah, yeah, but loads of people are having antibody tests in England, though. It's like everybody's having antibody tests, and now I think they're free on the NHS now. They weren't for a while. I had to pay the equivalent of $150 to get mine, but I really wanted to know if I had it. And
lots of people are freaking out, like when you go out in public, if people were just sneezing or coughing, we had that. Got it. And it just created such paranoia that people are just keeping their distance, and it's just it's just not normal human behavior to do that.
And that has abated a lot in England now. People aren't seeing it with the same kind of, I mean, they're still terrified of getting it and passing it on to a family member who's vulnerable, but that's the main focus now. Could I pass it on to someone who's vulnerable? Not will I get it myself, and will I be struck down?
Sure.
So, and I feel like in New Zealand right now, just having come back last week, we're still at that petrified of it kind of phase. Although this week it doesn't look like, because I can see people on the street doing whatever they like. But,
I've said this before on previous episodes that I've seen two realities play out: the people that have completely bought into the fear and gone fully masked up and followed all the rules, and you can see it in their body language and their behavior and just everything they do. And the other people have gone, okay, I'm just going to sort of, as you like to say, Steve, phase out, create my own little world, carry on with life as best I can, and what this SAS say, improvise, adapt, and overcome, and then and just go, well, I need to just keep, doing what I'm doing. I can't let fear and paranoia and the mind virus take over when I'm physically capable and fit. I can't let fear stop me from leaving the house and
not if
living
there's
my life.
Every likelihood that you're just going to pass through it like you would any other winter ill. For yourself. Why would you live in fear if you're really unlikely to be affected by it?
And the two realities also incorporate the mainstream media and government, information that gets fed through all the mainstream channels, and then this sort of alternative questioning or conspiratorial sort of channels saying, hey, let's look at this at another approach. So it's sort of like two camps.
Yeah, I agree. And to hear Richard talk about people just going, I had it, and getting tests, and it just being so normal is different.
Well, it's not
from the feel that I have here in New Zealand. It's totally different.
I mean, no one wants to get it, and people do freak. There's lots of people who still freak out about getting it, and I don't want it. I mean, of course, no one wants to get it, but and it's really dangerous to certain people. They're still not sure why, but in general now, they've come to a point in England where they've said, well, which there's just a general feeling, at least where I was in Surrey and London, is that, we can't carry on like this. We can't go on like this, and there's that whole thing with England as well.
It's just not worth it.
No, it's that war mentality as well.
I was going to say, yeah.
The Nazis didn't beat us. This is not going to beat us.
What's that famous Churchill quote? Reminds me of that.
What?
Keep calm, carry on.
No, I need to look that up actually.
But it's not like, it's just like, this is not going to fundamentally change our way of life, and they're getting really, really annoyed with the government in England. In England, people are getting really, really annoyed now with the feeling that the government has encroached so far into their, into fundamentally how they interact and live their lives and what they like to do, that they're probably at a point where I think if they tried to lock down the way they did in March, I don't think people would take it anymore. I mean, they're not now. You're supposed to wear a mask in a supermarket, but some people don't wear masks and it's not enforced. No one in Sainsbury's is going to say, halt, you aren't coming in. They say they will and they're supposed to, but they won't do it because, they're over it.
So I'm really keen to know, Richard, what was it like coming back through in terms of them keeping a show of security for you, or keeping you safe?
It was
or didn't they?
Well, they did bark orders at us a little bit, but I don't know. It just, look, let me just put it this way. You got a bunch of people coming off a flight, right? They've all been on that flight for how long? I went through from Heathrow, and I'm at Heathrow. And let's not forget when I'm at the airport as well, right? I'm at the airport, I'm mixing with everyone at the airport. You can't help it. There's no social distancing. We're in a queue. And there's signs everywhere saying social distancing. There's yellow stickers on the floor. And people are like there's 4 people in between where the stickers are. Do you know what I mean? So it's supposed to be like, what, a meter, is it? What is it? A meter we're supposed to give? I don't even know. No one knows anymore. Right.
Yeah.
So we're supposed to not be near each other, and 4 people are squeezed in there, it's a family in the bubble. Some people have bubbles of 8, like it's just, and then you get on a plane with a compressed vacuum of air on a plane recirculating. I don't know. And then you get off the plane and you come to you get on a bus and you come to quarantine, right? Now, in this hotel now, if you're on day 2, you could quite easily accidentally, or as I saw yesterday, on purpose, because you've got to wait there's only one person allowed in an elevator, right? So one person in the lift at a time. So obviously, if everyone's going downstairs to get swab tested, there's going to be 30 people, 40 people, whatever, going downstairs to get swab tested, one at a time and coming up in the elevator. How long is that going to take? 2 hours? 45 minutes? A long time. Longer than you're willing to wait, right? So, inevitably, someone will say, "What? No, mate, come on in." And they'll hold the lift door open and 4 people will get in the lift. Some of those people, maybe there's someone coming downstairs because they're going on a walk that day. They're on day 13. They've just gotten into a lift with a guy on day 2, day 1. It's just like, so it just negates everything that you've just been through. And that's what I don't understand. That's what I can't get my head around. Is
what were you saying about the experience on the bus?
Well, we're just all on the bus together, but that's fine. We've all just been on a plane together, right?
True.
So there's however many people on the bus, but I get it, but then when we get to the hotel, it seems like just.
What about the people who were working for the facility or the bus or whatever, just mixing it up with you and then walking outside into the rest of the world?
Well, the guy is they asked us to stand back, but they're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of people a day. And let's not forget this; it's an absolute lie that the borders are closed. You can easily look up on the government website how many people come into the country a day and how many people leave. I think on the day I came in, there are 420 or something. Maybe I could be wrong. But there's a lot of people, right? I mean,
it's the website that tells you the flow in and out.
I can send it to you. I can't remember.
Okay.
You can just Google it. Yeah,
because it's really
it's what do they call it when you they have to give you the information? What's it called?
Freedom of information.
Freedom of information, yeah, something like that. Whatever it's called in New Zealand, yeah. So, I mean, these guys are dealing with hundreds of people a day, so they're standing outside, putting people's, stuff on their suitcases and stuff on the bus. But the whole thing of there are points when you are within arm's reach of them, when you are virtually brushing their shoulder. It's just inevitable. It's inevitable. You can't stop it. And I know they say, oh, that's not how it works. We got this. We got a rope here. We've got, you have to place your cases here, and then you move over to the thing. Yeah, I get it. But in practice, just like we've proved in England, it does not work. You can't do it. You can't do it.
And that's where the real...
You will brush up against someone.
That's where the illogical sort of process starts to happen, where then the nonsensical and the confusion, because you realize that everything they're trying to do to stop it is just not going to work. It's going to get undone. It's like going outside and thinking you're not going to get rained on, like at some point it's going to rain. So it's just, it's totally fruitless. It's like lining up at the supermarket and maintaining distance. And as you say, as soon as you get in the supermarket, what happens? You're passing people shoulder to shoulder, etc. It's just not going to work. So what's the point of lining up? What's the point of even doing it? And that's where a lot of people will struggle with the whole common sense and go, well, it's pointless. It's a pointless exercise.
So you have to submit to a mandatory COVID test, right? But the thing is, it's not mandatory as such, because you do have the right to refuse it. So if you refuse to have your COVID test, say I refuse to be physically touched on the grounds of whatever, I just don't want it to happen. They can't arrest you. They can't kick you out of the hotel. But they could possibly move you to a different facility, which they may do, move you to Jet Park or something like that, right? In proper isolation. But
you mentioned Jet Park as though it were kind of a threat. You said that it was threatened to you as you
did I?
Well, you did. Well, you said that someone got up and said, "No, listen, it's this way or the highway." Essentially,
or the Jet Park.
Tell that story. Yeah. Well, what did they say? They treated it like it was.
I can't remember, but just this. Look, I'm not going to lie. It is so nice here. It is amazing. I've got a big screen TV. I've got unlimited internet. I'm getting fed so much. I can't believe it if I don't stop eating. Oh my gosh. And the food's good, and so the fear of going out to near the airport to Jet Park, where I'm told the facilities aren't as nice, it'd be like going to Nauru or something.
So who told you that if you don't XYZ, it's Jet Park for you?
Oh, he said that if I didn't submit to the mandatory COVID test, there was a possibility that I would have to get moved to a different facility, maybe Jet Park, but most likely I would get told I would have to stay here for 28 days. Now, if they kept everyone here for 28 days, right, and you had to stay here for 28 days, maybe you were tested, you weren't tested, whatever, but you're here because after 28 days, it's not going to matter if you are truly isolated. I would think that a better way to do it here would be to make sure that there's no way you can come into contact with anyone who wasn't on your plane. There's no way you can come into contact with anyone who isn't on the same day as you, right? But we are able to come into contact with people who are on day 2, who are on day 3. I'm on day 5 now, it'll probably be 6 tomorrow. I came into contact with a guy on day 2 today. So, we were very close to each other. We shouldn't have been, no. But, we're fighting to get in a lift. So, there's a possibility that if you do dissent, they will send you to a different facility. Or I guess maybe there's other methods they could use to make you submit to the test, but they make it pretty clear that it's all the literature that we have says that there is no right to refuse this test, and everything that you sign leads you to believe there is absolutely no right you have no right to refuse this test. When that's
so it's worded in such a way that there's no out.
Absolutely, and then when you find out that there is an out, you can just say no. It's not the done thing, and it's not the Kiwi way, and it's not trying to keep everyone healthy. And I get it. I wouldn't have refused the test. I had no intention of refusing it, but I wanted to know what would happen if you did. And they keep you here for 28 days. So, it's not mandatory in the way they say it. Well, at least I was told it wasn't. So,
and if you want to go,
it's so weird.
That sort of conspiratorial route, like if you comply with, say, these sort of things like the test or, just the social distancing, it's slowly tiptoeing down. Well, then you'll start to comply for other things that are sort of next up. That's where my sort of mind starts to go, is what's the next phase and what's the next step? What's the next evolution of this whole process? What's in the pipeline? What's already been planned?
You're going to have to be vaccinated. You won't be able to get a job
that's the obvious
without having the vaccine. You won't be able to get a job. Your children won't be able to go to school without getting a vaccine. I think that's what people fear, and I think that's probably quite likely, to be honest. I really do. I think that people are more... I feel like people are
Don't
more...
worry, Richard. Because you're no conspiracy theorist. You'll take your vaccines, right? You're an ordinary guy. You don't think that they're loaded.
Well, Mum's English, and so I was always brought up with healthy... But does it worry you
that potentially some untested vaccines that haven't had any long-term safety study will be put into you, and we'll just see how it goes? She'll be right.
Well, I don't... I'm sure you could Google how long... what the average time is for a vaccine to go through, let's just say FDA testing, because
the shortest is 18 months. Yeah, so that's not even average. That's just the shortest.
Yeah, okay. Shortest is 18 months. Is that in New Zealand or that's probably America, right?
It's worldwide.
That's
worldwide. Probably America, yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I hate needles.
Completed it.
But no, I wouldn't. I don't want to be vaccinated. No, I don't. I actually don't want to be vaccinated. There you go.
I wonder if they've done a poll in New Zealand of how many people, if they just did a poll right now, how many people in New Zealand would say yes to a vaccination or no. I wonder what the figures would be, because the figures I last rumoured to hear in Australia is that 70% are anti it. So I don't know if that's accurate, but I would love to know what the numbers were or are.
It could be the same, yeah. I don't know. But 70% sounds about right. I know a lot of people in England say no way, not in a million years.
Yeah.
And so, in the English are very, they protest a lot and they say no a lot. They say no a lot. Society over there, I feel like society is less compliant in England than to here when it comes to big things like lockdown. And that compliance was admirable, and people in England looked at New Zealand and said, "Well, this is amazing. Admirable. You guys are just doing exactly what you're told." But when it comes to a vaccine, I think it's a different story.
Yeah. Yeah, you're putting something inside your body that you either consent or you don't. But, I have this philosophy that I am responsible for my body and my welfare and my health, and I decide and choose what I do with it and what I put into it. And that's your sovereign right as a human being.
I don't think it will be in a couple of years. I do think that's my fear, is that that you won't have those rights in a couple of years. It won't be your right to refuse a vaccine, because it'll be seen as protecting other people, not yourself, which is the way that they have framed the mask wearing thing, worldwide, America and England.
That's the psyops,
about
the
other
narrative.
People. It's about other people. It's not about you.
That's right.
And I get that, but it's the way they've marketed the masks is because there's I don't know if you see look on BBC today, they're still fighting on whether kids should be wearing masks to school in the UK. I mean, and this is months and months and months after the actual peak of the virus. Like it's like closing the gates after the horse has bolted.
I'll tell you what,
the
Richard,
definition of it,
I'd love you to check out the Plandemic Indoctrination movie at plandemicseries.com.
Okay, I will.
Because I thought that this time with you on our show would be more than a once-off occurrence, because you have a total of 14 days, right, where you have to see out your quarantine in a hotel. You mentioned you were at day 5 or 6 now. Is that correct?
I think it's day 5.
How about we check in again at day 10? and then again at 14, just to plan this, and so that our listeners know that that's going to be how we run it. Because I think what we've got now is your initial experience. I think we'll have perhaps something that comes across as more learned by day 10, certainly to get a sense of anything that, is now being revealed to you as what's really going on. And then at day 14, perhaps just after you get out, and if you wouldn't mind, because, you think about things pretty deeply, check out that movie, and I'll send you the link to it, plandemicseries.com.
Can I?
Interestingly, you can't search for it, which says a lot. Try putting those words separately, and Google won't take you to the
Doesn't
website.
surprise me.
Yeah.
And that's something.
That's why I'm saying it a few times to review our listeners who want to go there. It's Plandemic Series, and it's excellent. You can get a download of it or watch it.
Can I also, I want to say just briefly, is that it's so unnatural and so weird being in isolation like this. And I'm not saying on some level I'm not enjoying the solitude, but you go through such waves of I wake up in the morning and I'm hating it, and then this afternoon I'm kind of like, this is okay, but it's just like constant, and it's quite fascinating. So when are you ever going to be in a situation where you physically can't leave? Well, unless you're in prison, right? That's really the only time. So, and this is nothing like prison, but it's I can't leave. I can't leave. I can't walk out the gate outside and go to Countdown. I can't go for a run. It's really weird, man.
It is really weird because it's something that it's been imposed on you. You didn't choose to do this, and we and I guess most people would be in the camp of, well, we're doing this for the right reasons, for honorable reasons, which is great, But you're right, it's not natural to be in this situation. You want to re-enter your home country and visit your family and friends and reintegrate into society and do the things that normal people do when they come back from an overseas, from living overseas. And there's so many stories out there of just people that their normal social interactions, whether it's visiting their grandmother up, in some part of the country or whatever, it's just everyone's got a story, and it's just crazy. And it's sometimes I can't even put into words how I feel about this, other than it doesn't feel right, So my mind gets so confused, but when I sink down back into my being, into my heart, I go, something's off. This is not natural. This is something, energetically, it's just not, it's off. It's definitely off. But trying to figure out what it is that's really hard. But it feels like a distortion that's happening on a consciousness level, on a humanity level. And you don't even have to really think about it. You just feel into it and go, hang on. And I'm not alone in feeling that,
You're not alone. And then don't forget too, it's good that you actually realize the changes that are going on. I feel like they keep pushing and pushing and screwing a little tighter on what they'll accept at level 2. I mean, for God's sake, level 2 is about to be compulsory mask wearing as of whatever, next Monday or something.
Oh, yeah, that was always going to happen.
On public transport.
Yeah, big time.
Okay.
And that won't end for a long time.
That wasn't how it was. It's just another little thing that they've shoved into that level.
That's what I'm saying.
It's just a small further introduction of another loss of freedoms. Fine, but we are the frogs being cooked in the pot. Slowly the temperature is turned up and we don't realize, we don't notice. So Rob, when you say, I only have to feel into it, well, you're kind of using your superpowers there. But an ordinary person only needs to remind themselves, it wasn't like this last year. It wasn't like this 6 months ago. It wasn't even like this in the first version of COVID restrictions. And we had some of the most stringent in the world. And now we're going back down to level 2, but it's more like sort of level 3 with a bit more movement. And it's just every day another erosion until we're acclimatized. It's become normal. And then that's just life, guys. Sorry, that's just how you have to live now, even when it's just sort of problem free.
Well, there are 123 active cases in New Zealand today, right?
Yeah, in a week
so how
those
can
123 will half be gone, won't they?
Well, maybe not. Maybe there'll be 600. But how can you even think about changing the restrictions that are on right now if there's still 123 cases? That's what I'm saying. Like, if you're going to do it, lock it down completely. Get rid of it, right? Lock everyone down. No one's allowed out, right?
Yeah.
Or
just
do what they're doing in England now, which is a gentle easing. Not that Boris articulates it very well, but like they're calling an easing, like an easing of the lockdown. Just start doing that, But this there's just so little information. There's so little information. No one knows if they're supposed to be wearing masks, where they're meant to be wearing masks. I don't know. That's what it feels like, at least. Mind you, I haven't been out, have I? So what do I know?
Is this really about health?
In the news?
That's my question. Is this truly, genuinely, really about our health, our welfare, or is it something else?
At the peak of the pandemic in England, it felt like it was definitely about health. People were dropping like flies.
I don't want to get this, and I don't want to die.
There was 780 people a day dying, going up to 800 and something people a day dying. That's not the amount of people that actually had it, and then my friends started getting it, and then, just everyone started getting it, like, seriously. And, it felt like it was about health. But then a lot of people started to recover, and we started to hear more recovery stories, or I did among my friends, and I did deaths, thankfully. And, people started to say, well, okay, so we can carry on, and we have to move on with our life. We have to go to work, right? You have to go to work. You have to go to work. You have to go to school, right? Look at what's happened with the A-levels in England this year. It's been it's totally screwed up. There's kids who are going to have to repeat. There's kids who can't get into courses at Oxford, that they've like literally all their school lives, they've wanted to go to Oxford. And now COVID's destroyed it, or, has COVID destroyed it, or has the government's policies destroyed it, or whatever? They can't go. And so, life has to go back to normal. And in New Zealand, it has to go back to normal sooner or later. People just have to understand that it has to go back to normal. Has to.
Yeah, but they, from the very, very beginning, the narrative was things won't go back to normal. There will be a new normal, and I think that's what you're talking about.
A new normal then. Sorry, I should have reworded it.
Yeah, sure. Normal, but I know what you mean. But yeah, that they already established, even before, this was like way at the beginning, things won't go back to normal. Although it was planned and they knew. It's like, hang on a minute.
Talk about planned. I mean, it's absolutely an example of social engineering. When you watch that movie, you'll see the role plays they did in October last year that were so scripted and so carefully crafted on multi-camera setups using actual actors to play out scenarios that even included pre-recorded footage of news events, and then to see them play out in real life, word for word, will blow your effing mind.
What's it called?
Plandemic 2.
Yeah,
and so it's on that website.
I saw the first film. I haven't seen the second one. I got to get ready for that.
And look, to
is it going to freak me out?
Plandemic 2, which is called Plandemic Indoctrination, which is at plandemicseries.com. Plandemicseries.com, guys. It is phenomenal, and it's a great sequel to the first one. So the first one, they cobbled it together quickly and went, this is a real shock. This doctor presents information about the construction of this virus, how it was man-made, and more. But then they got so much shit for it. They've come back with even more information, and it's summarized a series of months up so well. You look at it and go, oh my God, I'm living in a constructed, socially engineered world. All of this is it's too good to be true, how it's followed a series of events that were planned.
Prepared to get your mind blown.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about all the information I got, and me calling the Ministry of Health twice and things like that, but maybe next time.
Yeah, well, look, let's wrap this one up and come back in 5 days for you, Richard. It might be for our listeners, and we'll have the wisdom of what you've gained and anything that you want to slot in. If you don't have anything new, give us those notes.
No. I will. I need to talk to you about all of the information I got the other day when I first got here, which was just made no sense at all. Absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
You couldn't interpret it. You couldn't interpret what it was trying to say.
I hope
ridiculous.
Anyone who's got family or friends returning to New Zealand will get a lot out of what you can offer them, Richard.
Well, they're treating us really, really well here, but none of it is making any sense. And it's not just me saying that. It's people in the lift. It's people downstairs. It's people on the bus. It's people on our walk, our clockwise walk on the wharf yesterday. That look, just a word of warning. If you go on that walk, you have to walk for 45 minutes. They won't let you go back to the bus after 10 minutes.
So that's a lot of steps.
No, you must. Didn't you want fresh air? Yeah, I got it now. Can I go back to the bus? This is kind of boring.
Submit to your overlords, Richard.
And they said no. They said no, I couldn't. And
Can
I was I have to walk.
Can I leave you with this Winston Churchill quote that I found?
Yep.
Because we were talking earlier about the UK, their their courage and their conviction to say no, and so this is from Winston Churchill: never give in, never give in, never, 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 in nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in, except to convictions of honour and good sense. That was the one I was referring to. That was during World War II. Yeah. But I love that. Yeah, never give in, with your convictions.
Yeah.
If you believe in something, if you've got convictions and you're doing it for the right reasons and the honourable reasons, then it's worth fighting for.
Yeah. Yeah, that is powerful. A little bit repetitive, to be fair. But quite powerful.
You gotta, let it sink in.
Repetition, Stephen,
yeah.
Come on, it's a basis of our training.
Yeah. Speaking of repetition, go to plandemicseries.com and check out that movie.
I will check it out. Yeah. So are we going now? Because I just one more thing I want to say.
You go on. You finish it up.
So there's coming back here, and I was speaking to another guy today who's come from Scotland. I'm just out by the lifts today. God, you think I haven't got it bad at all? He's over here with staff, and they're getting paid a couple of $100 per diems a day. It's just madness. So can you imagine how much it's costing his company? And he's obviously paying for his quarantine too before any Kiwis go nuts. Okay, he's paying for his quarantine, and so is all of his stuff. So basically, he said it as well, it feels like this is where we were in England in March and early April. And if you look at it, to keep your sanity, if you look at it that way, that this is just this phase that we're going through in New Zealand because we tried so long to beat it, right? And it can't be beaten. I really believe that. So we spent that time beating it, and we were really successful. Yeah, praise, brilliant. But now it's come back, and we're at the phase where we were in England. March, beginning of April, or maybe middle of April, and this is the most chaotic phase. This is chaos. This is when the lockdowns were happening. They weren't happening. Masks, no masks. What are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to go to work today? Can we go to work today? And it feels like we're kind of in that phase right now where people are starting to give up. They're starting to give up. And from what I saw yesterday, there were lots of people out and about, man. There were lots of people out and about. And if that's lockdown, well, I don't know. Auckland's supposed to be in lockdown. I didn't see it yesterday. A lot of people were out enjoying the viaduct on their hour walk. Anyway, so yeah, we're at the worst phase right now, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, on that note, we'll see you in 5 days. Bye, guys.
Cheers, Richard.
Thank you. Loved it.